What is up, my friends? How are we doing? Excited to have you here. Another episode of Diner Talks with James. My friends, I hope you're having a good day. I'm excited that you and I get to kick it. Welcome back into the diner. One day we're going to do this live in some diners, y'all, and I'm excited about that. My friends, if you are tuning in, let me know, where are you tuning in from? Let me know what part of the country you are in. And if you're not in the United States, let me know what country you're in, because that would be pretty dope too. So let me know where you're coming in from. And also, if I sound okay to you, I always like to make sure that the audio sounds good. If you could do me a favor and just smash that thumbs up button or the heart button or the like button, whatever it is, just so I know that it sounds good, I would really appreciate that, y'all. But I'm super excited to get this show cooking. We got people pouring in the diner. Yes, that's right. There was a line outside, my friends, people waiting for this diner to open up. So super excited to have you all here. As always, please put where you are coming in from in the chat so I can shout you out and give you a little love, y'all. I always like to know who's in the building. So, my friends, let's go ahead and get this thing started. Welcome to Diner Talks with James. I'm James. Super excited to be with you all here today, my friends. My boy Isaac Addae is in the building. I'm really excited for you to meet him. He is a fascinating man with charisma out the pores, and just a great dude. It's funny. Normally, a lot of the guests up until this point, I've known for probably at least 3 years, maybe 10, maybe more. And Isaac and I know each other for a solid 2 weeks, but I could just tell from the jump that he and I were going to be good people and good friends. And I just found him fascinating. So I asked him to come through to the diner and have a bite to eat with me. I don't know if he's eating, but we'll find out. But my friends, it's Diner Talks with James. And there's standards here, friends. There's protocols. So let's jump in. Tonight's top three. Let's go right now. Here we go. Top 3 dog breeds. I asked Tina, what should I talk about in the top three? And she said, you should talk about your favorite dog breeds, because 95% of the Instagram messages that Tina sends to me are dogs. So there's that. Constantly planting seeds. So here you go. My top 3 favorite dog breeds. First off, I love Great Danes. I like a dog with a big ass head. Next, I like Bernese Mountain Dogs. And last but not least, I truly fit the stereotype. When people say, oh, your dog kind of looks like you, that's exactly what I want. I want a Newfoundland. I want a small bear to hug. I need a dog that I can hug. We have a beautiful 16-pound lovable dog right now, but I feel like I'm going to crush her. And I just don't need that kind of stress in my life, all right? I'm already a big man walking these streets. No matter what kind of dog we get, the most important thing that you need to know is that the dog's name will be Bill. Bill the Newfoundland. All right, my friends, let's go. Any dog owners out there? If you have a dog, let me know about your dog. What kind of dog you got? What's your dog's name? Let me know. All right, here we go. Number 2 in the top three. The top 3 spiciest experiences of my life. Now, my friends, this is not the kind of spicy that you were hoping I was going to talk about that. That's for the After Hours Diner show that'll come out later when I've decided I need to be more popular. But no, these are actually spiciest foods. And since my guest is coming through from Nashville, this is how I thought about this. So first off is Hattie B's hot chicken. Hattie B's hot chicken, not by far the most well-known hot chicken in the Nashville area, but not the best hot chicken in the Nashville area. But cultural appropriation never tastes so good. So shout out to Hattie B's for sure. Next, I was once in Ithaca and I decided to get some pad thai. And the woman asked me, how spicy would I like it? And at that point, I started liking spicier food. And I said, you know what? I'm feeling confident today. Go ahead and make it spicy. That was a big mistake, y'all, because them Thai folk know how to add some spice to a meal. And I was literally burning. Didn't have anything. There was not enough Thai iced tea in the world. And last but not least, the spiciest experience of my life. I went to this one shop. You ever walked around a small town and they always have those places where you can try all the different olive oils and stuff like that, and you can all the different balsamics and things? Love those shops. Here for a free sample, my friends. Probably the only reason I have a Costco subscription. But there's this shop in Brooklyn called Hedonism. And that's hedonism spelled Heat, anism. And so you walk in and you can try all of these different hot sauces. And I was like, yo, that's going to be amazing. Let me get in there. Oh, yeah, I'm going to get this blueberry habanero, get this mango chipotle, get this ghost whatever jump, right? I'm trying all these hot sauces. And then my face was effectively on fire. And I said, okay, I'm done trying things. Do you all have any bread, any milk, any water? And they just like, nah, we don't. So my dumb ass walked around the rest of Brooklyn sweating. Anyway, my friends, last but not least, the third thing. These are in honor of my boy Isaac. He's a professor, so he may shake his head at me for this, but these are the top 3 things I did in class in college instead of paying attention to the teacher. All right, here we go. First off, I played video games in the back row with a controller hooked into my laptop. That happened. Okay, next. I also, as I mentioned last week, I destroy all pens that I have. In college, what I used to do is I used to buy those wooden pencils, number 2, of course. Come on, I'm a man with standards. And then I would bite intricate designs into my pencils, and eventually they would split in half and the lead would wind up in my mouth. I know it's graphite, but the way I turned out, I think it might have been lead in some of those. Okay. And last but not least, in anthropology, my sophomore year of college, I was not interested in paying attention. And so instead I said, hey, James, you're going to be famous one day. You need to have a better signature. So you got to come up with you're going to be famous one day signature. And that's exactly what I did. And now I got a fresh ass signature and a solid C in that class. My parents, if you're watching, I am sorry. I hope I've made up for that in the time since I've left college. Friends, that's tonight's top 3. Top 3. Thanks for joining me. All right, y'all, let's jump into this guest. My boy Isaac Addae is a great man. He's a great man. He and I have had some great conversations since we first met, and I just respect the hell out of him from the jump. And so he is a business professor at Tennessee State University. He is also a former engineer. He's also done some incredible things working with companies that you have heard of, like Raytheon and some other things. And I tell you what, the man is also super passionate about being a change agent. He's doing a lot of really incredible stuff in his community that I'm excited to talk to you about today. So right now, my friends, bring on tonight's favorite Ghanaian. Shout out to my boy, Isaac Addae.
Hey. How you doing, man? Thanks for having me. Love that intro. I need to take you on the road with me.
I am available for hire.
Gotcha.
What's going on, man? You looking clean today, brother.
Hey, thank you, man. I appreciate it. I had to come with my A game. I figured, hey, I'm on Diner Talks. I got some tea.
There you go.
Got my gear. I'm ready to go. Got to replicate this diner feel,
We got to do something, man. Yeah, exactly. I miss it. These late night meals are some of my favorite things to do with friends. A mutual friend of ours, and the first guest on Diner Talks was Sam Davidson.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I have had many inappropriately late meals around the Nashville area when I come to visit. And so yeah. But I'm curious for you, man. What's your late night food move? Do you have a spot in town that you like to go to? Like, what's your guilty pleasure?
Yeah, man, I'm a chicken wing guy. So if I'm looking for a late night guilty pleasure, I'm probably going to hit up Patterson House, which is kind of over off of Music Row, Speakeasy. On their menu, they have this seasonal curry wing that they bring. And if I'm not there, I'm probably at Burger Republic in the Gulch getting their Memphis dry rub wings. That's my guilty pleasure.
Woo!
If it's not that, it's chocolate chip cookies. Wings and cookies, man. It doesn't get better than that.
Wings. I mean, you could certainly have a worse meal for sure. You could certainly have a worse meal. Now, here's the quintessential question: Are you blue cheese or ranch with your wings, or neither?
Ranch all day, man.
Ranch.
What are we doing with blue cheese?
Yeah.
Good buttermilk ranch, not just the regular stuff. The creamy ranch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, get that out of here, Kraft. Yep. We need that buttermilk junk or nothing.
Buttermilk or bust.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm here for that. I'm a ranch person as well. I don't like blue cheese. That's a disappointment that my mother has of me. But that's fine. It's funny because I went to Clemson for graduate school, and Clemson has apparently a world famous blue cheese. Like you can go online to
wow.
Clemson's website and order their blue cheese that their ag department makes. And
Who
every
knew?
year, who
Okay.
knew? Every year for Christmas, my mom would be like, "No, you're checking your luggage when you come home
Come
because I
back
need
with
you
some
to
of that
pack
Clemson.
some of that blue cheese." So she was always real. Yeah. And I felt bad because I couldn't partake in it, but it made my mom happy. So therefore, it was worth it.
Got to do it for mom, man. Even if it is blue cheese, right?
Yeah, exactly. The things we do for love, right?
Right.
That's awesome. So now, are you born and raised in the Tennessee area, or tell me a little bit about like where you were born and raised, man?
Yeah, sure. I was born in North Carolina, actually. My parents, when they came from Ghana, they started out in the Boston area in Worcester, Massachusetts. And I think they figured out pretty quick that the weather is different up there. So they started making their way down south. And along the way down south, they had me in North Carolina. But I grew up primarily in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And then I finished high school in Mississippi, Natchez, Mississippi. So pretty much been all around the southeast my whole life.
All around the South. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Natchez, Mississippi is the first place I went to in Mississippi. That's where I checked the state off my list.
Wow.
I mean, there's some cooler parts in Mississippi than Natchez.
Yeah. Natchez is an interesting place, man. It's got some really, really unique history. I don't know if you heard of the Natchez Trace before.
No, tell me about that.
Yeah. So the Natchez Trace is this trail that American Indians and other settlers used to bring goods from the Mississippi River banks, where Natchez was a big trading post, to Nashville, literally from Natchez to Nashville. So it's a historic preservation. You can ride on the trace and no traffic lights, no stop signs, federally protected highway. Yeah. You can go from Nashville to Natchez. It actually ends by my dad's house in Natchez.
That's incredible. Is that the quickest way to?
Oh, hell no. Because it's capped at, I think, 50 miles per hour. So you can't really, the fastest way is definitely interstate traffic.
I mean, there's a lot of roads that are capped at 50. But you know.
The Trace is one of them. Yeah, it'll probably take you 10 hours to get to Natchez. You know what? I actually have never driven the Trace from Nashville to Natchez. I probably should put that on my bucket list.
There you go. Yeah. That sounds like the kind of trip a dad would come up with for his kids, that he wants his kids to know just how important it is. And it would have been a better 7-minute lesson than a 10-hour drive.
Exactly. He's like, you guys are going to learn today. You're going to take this ride.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. So you bounced around a whole bunch, and your parents came here from Ghana, correct?
Yep.
Does that make you here? A quick question. Does that make you a first generation?
Yeah.
Or does that make them the first generation?
So it's kind of weird, but I think because I was born here, even though my parents were born and raised in Ghana, I'm a first generation American.
Okay.
So I consider myself to be Ghanaian American, but in my family, I am, the first generation in this country. So, when they talk about the Hispanic community, they use the term dreamer, right?
Yeah.
But, I think that probably can apply to, immigrant groups from all around the world that came to this country and looking for a better life.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. So why did your parents come here? What drove them here?
So my parents are from the Ewe tribe, which is a tribe that settled along the eastern border of Ghana. And our tribe is very what they call book focus or academic focus. That's just the general nature of our tribe. So my father came first, I think in about 1977, to go to school. Mm-hmm. So he actually came and started his bachelor's degree in the New England area. And he brought my mom, I think maybe a year or two later. But their goal was the American dream. They came here to chart a new path for our family and put us on a very different trajectory. And that's exactly what they did. Yeah, and I think it was a thing in the 70s too, where a lot of people were leaving various African countries and going to Europe or the United States.
Okay. There was a big movement in the 70s.
Yeah.
Okay. Now it's interesting, right? Because I'm white. I don't know if I hide that well.
I had no clue.
And so, in the learning here in the United States, what I was taught is always the watered down version of history, right?
Right.
And it's the part of history that made me feel comfortable, and that's lovely. And so here, I want you to lead again. If I ever say anything inappropriate, I hope that you will call me out because I'm here to learn today.
Sure.
But whenever I hear the term tribe, I immediately get put back into probably what is the most archaic form of the word tribe, right? Like people sitting around fires, and things like that, right? That when I hear tribe, right, I immediately think about what the pictures, the amateur pictures of Native Americans, right? And of African tribes with the spears, right? And that's, I mean, what are we talking about when you say tribe?
Sure. So when you hear me say tribe in reference to, my ancestral homeland, we're basically referring to a collection of people. So if you think about the continent of Africa in the way that it's demarcated and the lines are drawn, those lines didn't exist in pre-colonial in terms of colonialism. It just didn't exist. It was more lines based around tribe. And the tribes were based around language, essentially. So a group of people who may have spoken a different language and occupied this particular territory, they had a name. It was either the name of their tribe or most likely their language that they spoke is typically what was the name of the tribe. So in Nigeria, the Yoruba tribe speaks the language Yoruba, if that makes sense. In Ghana, you've got the Fantis, you've got the Ashantis. This language and tribe and collection of people kind of go together in that way. The reason things are different now is because when the colonial powers that be came and took over Africa, they drew up and carved up the country in a way where they cut across tribes. So my family's tribe, even though we're settled along the eastern border of Ghana, we're actually split across maybe 3 or 4 different countries because of where we were. And they just basically said, okay, here's a country, carved it up. And it literally carved the tribe up. So parts of the tribe are in other African countries, but it's the same language and it's the same people. They just settled in that particular area.
Are those different now facets of the tribe? We used to be different countries of that tribe. Is the tribe still close? Like, is that still something where, or have they, like, because these borders came in, were people like truly separated from each other? Or is it kind of like more of like a Canada-U.S. border?
To some extent, yes. To some extent, no. So, for example, with the Ewe tribe, with my family's tribe, we share a border with Togo. So Ghana is on the west, Togo is on the east. People in Togo are Ewe, people in Ghana are Ewe, but Ghana was settled by the British, was colonized by the British, and Togo was colonized by the French. So the Ewe people in Togo speak French. The Ewe people in Ghana speak British English. So that's a natural demarcation. So even though there is still the commonality of the tribe, how the colonial powers shaped those nations put some separation in place, essentially.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah, it's crazy. So let me give you a better example. You were in New York, right? Yes. So think about imagine the boroughs being there, but they aren't the boroughs. They just are collections of people, and somebody comes in one day and says, this is Brooklyn, this is Manhattan, this is the Bronx, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden your best friend that you grew up with is a part of a different tribe because the line cut across your neighborhood and now he is a part of another country. That's what happened in Africa.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's also what happened in New Jersey. And that's why we all make fun of New Jersey. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
New Jersey's like the redheaded stepchild of New York. New Jersey gets a bad rep.
Poor Jersey. That's awesome, man. Thank you for educating me and the listeners on that. So you are a first generation American. That's an interesting place to be because culture matters, right? And culture is so important, and culture is something that is passed on generation to generation. But being a first generation American, you now have the choice and you had the choice even growing up in your middle school, high school, whatever years, to adopt, whatever the right word is, probably all of them, to your new culture, while at the same time making a decision in your head what does being Ghanaian mean to me and whatnot. And so I'd be curious to hear, like, how has that been for you? And I guess in particular, was there a moment growing up? Let's start the conversation here. Was there a moment growing up where you said, no, I am a proud Ghanaian and this is what I am. This is how I will introduce myself. Or again, maybe you introduce yourself with your tribe, not even the fact that you're Ghanaian. And so like, was there a moment where you fell in love with it, your culture?
I'm glad you asked that question. I've had this conversation a few times, but never, widely on the platform like this. But growing up and being bicultural was difficult in the sense of at home, everything was Ghanaian. The food we ate, the way in which you heard our parents speak, the culture that we were expected to adapt and adopt, as you mentioned, to adapt to and adopt. It was very Ghanaian. So it was dominant at home. And then I would get on the bus and go to school, and it's just whatever the flavor of that particular locale was. So if I was in Arkansas, in Pine Bluff, which was predominantly Black, it was Black American culture, right? And so I'm immersed in both worlds, trying to make sense of both. I really understand either. And that was my childhood because I got what my parents were trying to say, but it took me going to Ghana when I was 9 for the first time to really get it. Like, oh, that's why all this is important. I mean, I had no fucking clue. You guys are beating this in our brains, but we have no perspective of what you're talking about because, I didn't grow up in the same environment. And so it clicked when I was 9 that I'm Ghanaian. But prior to that, my parents had always said to us, you guys are born here, but you're Ghanaian. And we're like, yeah, I hear you, but I'm trying to go to the movies or I'm trying to do whatever, it's just, I'm trying to be a Black kid or American kid. Yeah, right. And the cultures have some similarities, but they're largely two distinct cultures. I mean, I tell people all the time that Ghanaian culture with children is more about discipline, respect. It's not about your independence and your voice, which is what American culture promotes. Yeah. So my parents are raising, Ghanaian kids in Black America who are outside of the home being taught to be vocal and free speech and all of that. And at home, they're like, this is Ghana. That's not how this operates. So there was a ton of friction growing up, man. And it was tough. I'm just gonna be honest with you. It was tough. But I think my parents helped me navigate that by helping us understand why their culture was the way it was and why certain things were important. And so they kept those cultural expectations on us. And as I've aged, I've been able to better navigate both worlds. And that's been by traveling back to Ghana and, spending more time there as well.
They didn't just hit you with because we said so.
You know what? I think they figured that wasn't going to work because, again, we're raising kids in America. We challenge everything. So I'm like, why?
Yeah, right.
Why do I need to do this? It's like, because I said so. It's like, well, that's not working. You got to come up with something else.
Maybe you haven't met me yet, Mom and Dad.
Right. Do you realize where we are? Yeah. So it was interesting. But I feel like that's my strategic advantage in a sense, being bicultural and understanding both of those worlds.
Tell me more about that. That's a cool thing to say. It's a strategic advantage.
Yeah, man. I mean, I was in class this evening. I had my leadership class. One of my students stayed on after the class. He's an immigrant. He came here when he was in I think in the 11th grade. And so he was talking to me about his journey in America. He came from an African country, and he and I had a great conversation. And I think I became an ally strictly because I'm able to navigate both of those worlds. And I was able to help him kind of work through some of what he was challenged with. When I am dealing with people in the business world, per se, I have an understanding of how things work here. I also have an understanding of how things work back home. And back home, it's very relationship oriented, very connection oriented. I lean on that skill set and strength to help me navigate this particular world. So, as I've gotten older, man, I've really tried to figure out how to harness the power of being Ghanaian, but also being a Black American. And that's what you are seeing today is the result of that.
Yeah, for sure. That's beautiful, brother. That's beautiful.
Thanks, man.
I appreciate that a lot. And so, and speaking about your Blackness, you yourself, you wound up attending, I know you work at an HBCU.
Correct.
And did you also attend an HBCU as well?
So I did. Both of my engineering degrees came from Tennessee State. So I actually studied engineering at TSU. Yeah. So I'm an HBCU product, and finishing on my doctorate at Morgan State in Baltimore, which is also an HBCU. So
sure, I know Morgan State.
Yeah, I know, man. So it's your chapter. It's your alpha chapter. Yep. Iota Phi Theta. Yeah. So man, I'm a product of HBCUs, and I think. Let me think about it. Yeah, my parents and all my siblings that have gone through college, everybody at least has one degree from a Black college, from an HBCU.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So in the choice, and at the time that you had the opportunity to make a choice of college, obviously 400 plus institutions in the country.
Right.
What was it about HBCUs that attracted you to that experience?
Yeah.
Did you go and tour multiple types of institutions and then settle on one, or are you just like Tennessee State or bust?
So my mentor, Dr. Napoleon Moses, he was the provost, associate vice president at Alcorn State University. But when I met him, he was a department chair in the department my father worked in. My father's a professor at Alcorn State. And so my father has been a professor since I was, I think 5 or 6 is when he finished his doctorate. And he taught at HBCUs. So we were at North Carolina A&T. Then we were at University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, and then Alcorn State. So I've been on the HBCU campus since I was in diapers, essentially.
Yes, right.
So HBCUs are a core part of who I am. But when I was planning to go to college, I had done a college tour with Dr. Moses, my mentor, my guy. It's like my godfather, my second father. And he took us from Mississippi all the way up to Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, and back. And we hit all types of universities along the way. Yeah, it was a hell of a trip, man. I'll never forget. I just reminded him about it a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And after that trip, at that point, I was sold on Mississippi State and University of Tennessee because I was not aware of HBCU engineering programs and how strong they were. And growing up in the South, you heard about the big SEC schools. So I said, hey, I'm going to one of those. So I applied and I got in. But Dr. Moses and my father were really, really pushing me to consider going to a Black college. So even though I had been in those environments, I always thought, okay, if I wanted to study engineering, I'm in the South, the big schools you hear about, those are the places I want to go. Well, I was in Dr. Moses' office one day, my senior year. He pulled a course catalog off his bookshelf, and it said Tennessee State University. I had never heard of TSU. And I'm like, okay, what's this? And it had the Sophisticated Ladies Dance Troupe on the front cover. And I was like, man, these chicks are nice. And he was like, Isaac, they have a good engineering school. You should look at it. So I looked at it.
Like, yeah, engineering.
Right. They can engineer that. So, I looked at it, opened up to the engineering section, saw the website, went online, saw that they had a summer program for engineering, pre-engineering summer program for high school grads. It was, I think the application deadline was in 2 days. Okay. I applied, submitted my application, got in, went to TSU for the summer, got scholarships to study engineering, and the rest is history. Now, I did end up getting a full ride to FAMU, but I had already spent the summer at TSU and had made friends and decided I would just stay at TSU.
Okay. Decided you didn't want a great homecoming experience either.
You know what, man? FAMU's got it going on, but TSU is up there too, man. TSU's homecoming is up there.
That's the big rivalry. The big rivalry.
Yeah,
exactly. What's going on with these homecomings?
Yeah. Much love to FAMU though.
For sure. That's awesome, man. That's incredible. And now it's interesting, right? Because you decided to go to an HBCU, and then you get your multiple degrees in engineering at Tennessee State, which is incredible, and go on to be an engineer, right? What kind of engineering were you doing? Were you doing mechanical? Were you civil?
Electrical and computer engineering.
Electrical and computer. Okay, great. Yep. And then you're an engineer for a while, and then you're like, you know what? This is kind of for the birds. And I don't know about this engineering thing. And so you kind of switched careers. I mean, how old were you when you switched your careers?
So I started my career. I officially shifted to become a business professor January of 2015.
Okay.
I resigned from my last engineering role in the fall of 2014 because at that point I had gotten far enough in my doctorate program where I had finished all of my qualifying exams. And TSU was like, hey, we know you're not done yet, but we love to have you. Come on down. I had gotten a call from a buddy who was like, hey, we know you're in a doctorate program and TSU has a position open. Man, I never thought that I would come back to TSU as a faculty member. I thought I was going to finish at Morgan and maybe go work at Howard or something and still do the engineering thing on the side or whatever. But, there were some other plans more divine than mine, and they led me to Nashville. Yeah. That's awesome. It's a real homecoming.
A real homecoming though. That's special, man. And what was it like for your family for you to tell them, hey, I'm not going to be an engineer anymore?
Yeah. My parents, they've gotten a good understanding of me at this age, but at one point I think they were a little worried because they wanted me to go straight to IBM when I finished college. I had a job offer. I said, nope, I'm going to grad school. And they thought, oh, our son is crazy. Lord help us. What's wrong with this boy?
what did we do?
He got an offer to making almost $60K to go to Tucson, Arizona. He turns it down. And I'm thinking, I just want to go to grad school and I don't want to work and go to school at the same time. So let me just do this. So after my grad school tenure, my job offer at IBM got bumped up $15K and they were like, oh yeah, you're smart. Our son is smart. That was a good move. So when I told my parents that I was not as passionate about my engineering career and that I wanted to do something different with my life, it was interesting because my parents believe in me, but they come from a different world. And so my dad thought, okay, so you're married. I was married at the time. You have a young child. You're going to quit your job and go back and be a full-time PhD student. Lord help us. Come and get this kid. What the hell is going on? And so there was a little friction there. And I get it. Your parents, I'm the oldest. I'm the firstborn in this country. So whatever dreams they had of coming to America, I manifested those. So they looking at me to be the great hope for the family. And here I am, pivoting, and it didn't make sense, but it all worked out, man. I wanted to be more in control of my impact. I know that I made impact in my work as an engineer, but I felt like it wasn't as direct. I wanted to touch lives in a more direct way. And I had been in an academic setting my whole life with my dad being a professor. My mom was a social worker. Now she's a professor. And so teaching is just a part of my DNA and I enjoy it. And it was a great shift, man. The way I happened up on business, though, I never intended to get a PhD or attempt to get a PhD in business. I thought maybe I'd do an MBA and get an engineering PhD and teach when I'm old and can't do engineering anymore. Right. But a mentor of mine who was an engineer and got his doctorate in business said, why would you do an MBA when you can just get a PhD in business? And I was like, who gets a PhD in business? And he said, everybody that teaches in a business school. And I'm like, think about it. You never hear about a business PhD. Sure. You hear about PhDs in other fields, but not business. And so I ended up, from my ex-wife, learning about the PhD Project, which is an organization that helps people get into doctorate programs in business. And I started my journey at Morgan State. And, I'm almost done, a decade later, thank God. But the shift wasn't the easiest shift, but it was a pivot in my career that has changed my life in a profound way.
That's incredible. Yeah. So do you think you're getting the PhD because of the opportunity it's going to open up for you to teach?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just by getting into the doctorate program, finishing my coursework and taking my qualifying exam and passing it gave me the opportunity that I have at TSU right now. Yeah. So it opened up a door for me, but I think that the degree is going to open up even many more doors that I can't even fathom at this point, because my background in engineering, having a business degree with my community engagement positions me to be sought after from people from all different backgrounds. Mm-hmm. And I think it's things are going to really take off in the next few months.
That's exciting, man. Yeah. Cause you're almost done.
Yeah.
We're wrapping up here. When do you defend?
I believe in January. I'll be done.
Let's go.
Yeah,
I love that.
So keep my fingers crossed.
Yeah. You know, what's funny, Isaac, I've thought about getting a PhD or an EDD, some sort of terminal degree like that. And I think that in order to do it, you need to do it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's the right reason. Like, I think if I was going to do it, it would be just because it's like, well, I think I need a little more credibility.
Yeah.
Right. It would be like, you know, just those 3 letters after my name. Well, then people would respect me. Then people would think I'm intelligent. Yes, and it's so, but that, I mean, people who, and correct me if I'm wrong, people who get into programs for that reason don't often finish them because they're not necessarily down for the work, right? PhDs have almost nothing to do with intelligence and almost everything to do with grit, and just 100%. The ability to put the nose down and get the work done. So. Yeah, I've thought about getting. There's also parts of me now that as I've gotten a little bit older and ideally more mature. I don't know. Let's find out. But there's also part of me that's like, oh, it'd be cool to run my own study, and then why not publish it? And if I'm going to do that, then I might as well get a doctorate along the way and not just do some independent study. And so, I don't know. So there's parts of me that's slowly coming around. I don't know if we're going to do it or not. But I know that the initial reason for me was like, this will make people respect you. And that's just not the reason to do it.
You know, what I can say about the doctorate degree in any field, any terminal degree, it has to come from a selfish place, because if you're doing it for somebody else, that's not enough. If you're doing it for some vain reason, it's not enough, because it's so easy to just walk away from it. It's one of the most unnecessary things that you have to go through. Like, you don't need to do it. I mean,
it's one of the most unnecessary things.
You got to get a bachelor's. You know, you might need a master's. Maybe if you get a bachelor's in English, you might need a doctor. But I mean, it's one of those things where you have to sign up for it. You have to be willing to put in the work. And for me, one of the things that I struggled with was a big part of my pursuing this path was family. And so when I got divorced, it was like half of my desire for even wanting to do this went out the door with the marriage. And I was like, well, okay, I had to make it about me, you know, and it takes, you know, a selfish act to finish it, because you do have to isolate yourself, you know, focus, lock in, and everything around you is going to be pulling you away from your work. You have to take yourself away from other things to focus on your work. So you've got to really want it for the right reasons. And my mother, which is a little different from my father, my mother had a career prior to starting her doctorate, kind of like me. My dad went straight through and got his doctorate. My mom worked as a social worker, and she didn't start her doctoral journey until after I was in college and became a social work professor. So she started later in life. I don't think that there's any right time to do it. I just think that if the desire is there, explore it, look into it, find a program for you, and go for it, because it's rewarding. It's definitely rewarding. You're going to learn a lot about yourself, and there'll be opportunities that come with it too. Yeah.
It's so funny the way you just said that, because that's what most people with PhDs tell me. Sometimes you learn more about yourself than the subject that you're doing the actual doctorate on.
Trying to get a PhD in business, I've also earned a PhD in Isaac. I've really come to really understand what makes me tick and what doesn't make me tick, and who I am, and also who I'm not. You know, I've gotten that through this journey.
That's awesome. I want to see what that hat looks like at graduation. That PhD in Isaac. I want to see. So what that felt.
Hey man, that's a crazy hat.
I love that. Yeah. Isaac, I want to talk to you a little bit more about what you do, and I want to kind of get into a little bit more of your teaching that you do. But let's jump into a segment first.
Sure.
Oh, not these two again over here. Okay, all right, break it up, you two. Enough of this here now. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. You're not smiling now, are you? All right. That only means that we've been getting a little bit too deep, and we need to lighten it up just a little bit, Isaac. So we're going to do a segment of the show called Things You Didn't Know About Me That You Didn't Know You Needed to Know But Are Now Glad That You Do. One thing you should know about this, Isaac, as a first-time viewer and first-time caller, is that the name of this segment changes every time because I can never actually remember it. But you get it. So, Isaac, we're going to share something random about ourselves, and I just to learn some random facts about you and some random facts about me. I'll go first, it's just because it's rude to put you on the spot like that. So. Something random about me is that I broke my left wrist trying to impress a girl in first grade.
Wow. That's pretty early in life, man. Pretty early, yeah. I thought I was going to get to hold her hand going in after recess. Instead, I held my teacher's hand on the way to the nurse. Wow. So, yeah. That's going to be a scar.
More emotional than anything.
In your memory. Yeah. Okay, so my turn. So I've gone skydiving once before, and I have it on video. I literally jumped out of a plane for a buddy's 30th birthday a few years back. Mm-hmm. And on the way to the skydiving place, I had no intention of skydiving. I was just going to be a support system. Yeah. And an hour later, I'm in the plane going up. And it was one of the craziest, most fun, stupidest, dumbest things I've ever done. I did it tandem, so I was attached to a big guy. Sure, yeah. Which was strange. But I
don't think they let you go alone on your first one.
You got not the first one. That might be the last one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so that's a random fact. And I have the video of it too. I got the whole thing video, and I just
That's insane. Where were y'all? Were you in Tennessee?
Yeah, we were this place outside of Memphis. I forgot the name of it. Maybe Tennessee Skydiving or something like that. Yeah. Yeah, it was exhilarating.
So you were in the car on the way to the spot, just as like, I'm a support. I'm gonna be there to put your leg back on after you land.
It was my line brother. Like, man, hey man, this is gonna be awesome. You're gonna love it. And then we get there, and his wife is like, yeah. So I was, the thought was that you all were gonna go because it was a whole group of guys, and I'm like, huh? I didn't sign up for that. I didn't even come dressed appropriate. I had Chuck Taylors on. Like, I would have wore some other shoes.
Yeah. In some ways, do you think that helped you? Like, instead of being like, oh, shoot, I'm jumping out of a plane in 72 hours in a week, right? Like, it's just kind of like, all right, we're here now. Okay, we're going up in the plane. This all happened like almost too quickly.
I can get cerebral about stuff, and I would have really just talked my way out of doing that. Like, okay, the angle of failure, the whatever. I'd have calculated some risk that made me say no.
A perfectly good plane, right?
Right. Yeah.
How was the experience like after you jump out of the plane? Like, what is it like when you're flying?
Man. So what I was trying to explain this to my fiance and our kids. We have 3 boys. We were talking about it, and I showed the kids the video, and I think it was her. I was telling that the moment that you jump out of the plane, you just feel like this big force of wind on your face. So the wind goes in your mouth, and you kind of can't really, you can't like keep your jaws and your mouth and all that, your cheeks closed because the wind is just forcing its way into your face. So you're kind of going down like that. But once they pull the chute, then it just all of a sudden shifts to this very calm experience. And then you can appreciate the scenery. And it's like, wow, it's beautiful up here. And then as you start getting closer to the ground, you're like, hold on, man, we're moving kind of fast. Like, are we going to slow down? And he's like, nah, keep your feet up. And you hit the ground. So you kind of slide down onto the ground, man. Yeah. So it's like a 4-step process: going up, the jump, the float down, and then the landing.
That's awesome. Would you do it again?
You know what, man? If the kid wanted to do it, I might, but I'll probably be too old by that time. I can't think of a
come down too hard. You lose that hip.
Plane again. Yeah, exactly. It's just one of those. It's like getting a doctorate. It's just something you don't have to do. You know what I'm saying?
Like, perfectly good plane again.
Right.
That's awesome. I've never jumped out of a plane. Been on many, but what I have done in the diving world is another fun fact about me is that I have my scuba diving license.
Oh, wow.
And so I've been scuba diving a bunch, and I absolutely love that moment where you go underwater and all of a sudden you just see an entire world that you intellectually knew was there,
but
but to then actually get in there and to see it, even it was funny, even if it's in like the most boring places, right? Like not just like coral reefs everywhere or whatever. I went diving in some river in Florida, and it's not like the fish are stunning and the grass is the same color green as other grass, but it's just all of a sudden you're just in a new world, and it's just incredible.
Yeah. You know, the thing that scares me about that, it's something that I have this weird relationship with water because I almost drowned when I was a kid. I guess that's an interesting fact. That's one I never really shared. I almost drowned, and then I saved my best friend who almost drowned. That's weird. But anyway, so I had this really love-hate relationship with water. But the whole scuba diving thing, I always think about bends, that whole, you know, coming up too fast. Yeah, it's just like that scares me just thinking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely scares me as well. I have never, I'm fairly new to diving, as in the amount of times that I have dove. Anyway, words are hard, but in the amount of times that I've done it, I have never gone to a super deep depth. Like I think the lowest I've gone is like maybe 40 feet.
Which is pretty deep, man.
Which is pretty deep. It is pretty deep. But at some point, like, I mean, I think after 30 is when you really need to make sure that you're not shooting up. And that's when, that's when it can get a little bit of an issue for sure. Okay. But yeah, that's also why it's important. Just like, I mean, almost identically to the idea of going with a buddy, you're being strapped to somebody. There's almost always an instructor with you, or someone who knows the area that is kind of there, who's a dive master. And I don't think I would ever do a dive without a dive master being there. Somebody's kind of, so somebody's out there doing the calculations of like, all right, 60 feet, that means we need to ascend at this
and a certain rate.
I don't need that kind of math in my life. So
it's one of those things where you can't panic and float back up. Like you can't rush your way back up. You got to still, it's that.
You leave the right amount of oxygen so you can just kind of flow.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And if there's one point too, at some point when you go so deep, you actually have to stop at like the 30-foot mark and like stay there for a minute and let your body decompress also.
Wow.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff, and it definitely can get scary. Absolutely. But I don't know. It's just pretty magical.
Hey, that's a nice claim to fame though, man. You don't meet too many licensed scuba divers out
there. I love it, man. And thanks for sharing that story about almost drowning too, man. That's scary, dude.
Yeah. So
how old was that? How old were you?
I played Little League baseball in Pine Bluff from age 8 to age 12. And at the end of the season, they'd always do a team party with the whole league, and they get all the kids and you go out to some lake. And so I was not a good swimmer, but I could doggy paddle and get around in the water. So it was never an issue. And so basically we would all float out to this little wooden dock kind of thing out in the middle of the river, and then you jump out and then you doggy paddle your way back to the little ladder and climb up and do it again. But the rule was when you jump, you wait for the person that jumped to get out of the way, and then you jump. Well, kids being kids, I jumped, and before I could get out of the way, some kid jumped and he kicked me, and I panicked and I went under, and it was it. That was it. And it's like you die, you could drown and die just like that. And from what I was told, you don't really know that the person is drowning. Drowning doesn't look like the movies. It's not dramatic.
Right. Yeah.
And so the coach's daughter was a lifeguard. She had to drag me out, and it was the most embarrassing thing. So I'm this washed up yuppie on the banks and they're basically like, you sit here for the rest of you can't go in the water. You're a liability. And I'm one of 2 black kids, man, in the whole entire league.
Makes it even worse.
So it's just like, here's this black kid. He can't swim. He almost drowned. Had to fish his ass out. Yeah. And my mom put me in swimming lessons, I think within the next couple of weeks. And her and my godmother would take me because my mom couldn't swim, but my godmother could. So when mom couldn't take me, my godmother took me. And so my siblings and I, we all got swimming lessons. And so with my kid, I had him in the water when, 6 months. I put some little swimmers on and I get him in the water because I wanted him to be okay with the idea of swimming. In a way, my best friend almost drowned was similar. We were at a pool in Pine Bluff. Some kid jumped in and kicked him and he went under. And luckily I was able to kind of grab him and pull him out, man. It's just it's
paying it forward, Isaac. You're
hey,
paying it forward.
He reminded me of it like 2 weeks ago. We were on the phone. He's like, man, you fished me out. We were in somebody's backyard. Parents were just looking. Nobody came to try to save us, man. Again, just some black kids probably had no business over there, but you know how it goes.
Oh shoot, man. That's so funny. That's so funny.
It's life.
That's
all my life I had to fight.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about what you teach. You're a business professor. Mm-hmm. I know you mentioned earlier that you had a leadership class earlier. Yeah. So that's awesome. And I don't necessarily know about the subjects you teach. Here's my question for you is that business is a lot about ethics, right? And there's so many ethics in business but at the same time, we live in a capitalistic society going all the way back to what you were talking about earlier, right? People love their freedoms, and whatnot. And so I'm curious to hear what some of your philosophies are when it comes to business around the teaching of it, getting involved, who should get involved in it, and how should they carry themselves, some things like that. I mean, I guess general philosophies around that you that you hope those students walk out with. So, hey, I'm excited to witness that student's business one day, or the way that person leads one day, right? How are you creating those kind of role models in the business world that coming out of your classroom?
I think my students would probably describe my teaching as grounded in compassion. That's what my research is on, and I do research on compassionate entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. I'm a very compassionate person, and I teach from that lens. So I try to impress upon my students the need to deal with people in a way where you're showing grace and compassion, even in business. As it relates to ethics and, doing the right thing, I teach business strategy, entrepreneurship, and leadership. And in all three of those classes, I do lecture on the need to have sound ethical principles, not only because it's a requirement in our curriculum, but it's just the right thing to do. We have so many examples in the world of just people being themselves, but then taking their full self to business. It's not the business that's corrupt. It's the individuals. It's people. People make up these organizations and they create the culture. And so when things are going wrong, it goes back to a person or a group of people. No company is bad. It's the people in it. So I just try to help my students understand the value in doing business the right way, and doing business in a way where you're compassionate. We talk a lot about corporations and the decisions that they make and the impact that they have on the workers and what that looks like. We talk about it from the corporate perspective. We also talk about it from, the individual perspective. If a company downsizes, and what does that look like from a bottom line perspective, but also what does that look like from a human capital perspective? Because I've worked in those settings. I've worked in companies where, the guy you're working with gets a pink slip. When I was at IBM, within my first 3 months as a full-time engineer, they did a division-wide layoff. Mm-hmm. And it was the worst thing I had ever experienced at that age, because they basically said, you have to find a new job in 30 days, but there's also a hiring freeze. So we're not firing you. You just have to find a new job in 30 days. But there's a hiring freeze, but you have to find a new job in 30 days. It's like, what the hell are y'all doing? That's how it rolled out, man. And I was like, wow.
And we're seeing that a lot right now, right around COVID, right? And just the way, companies, obviously this wasn't in their business plan for 2020. And so, but
plan to lose billions.
Yeah. Right.
Because of a pandemic.
Yeah. And so how do you handle it, right? You see a lot of people, obviously, CEOs and the top presidents taking 50% of their salary, and then the next level down's taking 75, the next level, what I'm saying, kind of goes all the way down, where everybody's taking a little bit of a cut. And so you see some of that, you see some of those ethics at work, but then, you also hear about some companies that just it's at one point in time, the guillotine comes down, right? Yeah. And all of a sudden they just chop a whole section of their workforce, and kind of blindside a lot of individuals. It's been fascinating to watch the dance in business right now.
Yeah. IBM cut 10K in the last month. A buddy of mine who had been there for, some years, he got caught up in it, and he basically said, man, they are wiping they're doing a huge headcount reduction. But of course, they have the stock market and investors that they are beholden to. So they have to show that they're willing to make these efforts to save money and, right the ship, as they say. Yep. There's always a human cost to doing business. And I talk to my students a lot about what that human cost looks like, because business is the language of the world. It's all about commerce and trade. Mm-hmm. But people drive it. So people are often negatively impacted by it too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's a powerful way to put it, that there's a human cost to business. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you an example, man. My son, he's 9. He asked me, I think sometime last week, he said, when there were cavemen, this is what he asked me. He said, when there were cavemen, did they have businesses? And I'm like, damn, he's been hanging around me too much. he's probably listening to this conversation over there in the corner. And I told him, I said, well, what people did back then was they engaged with trade. So you may have had an onion and I may have had an apple. So we would just trade. We use goods and that was our exchange. Now we use products and services and that's our exchange. That's just what we've evolved to. We're just advanced cavemen, right? Cave women or cave people.
Yeah.
Cave people. And so, back to your question, when you think about how businesses run today, it's still the same idea. There is some type of service or product being offered, and there's a certain individual or group of people who want that, and they were willing to trade currency for that product or service. Mm-hmm. But what we're seeing now, I'll pick on Amazon because it's the easy target, I guess. I just got a package today from Jeff. Hey man, Jeff sends out stuff. He's I'm sorry, man. Jeff sends stuff all over the world all the time, man. All the times of the day. But anyway, you've got organizations like Amazon who are doing a great job of providing products and services at a great pace and great speed, very effective. But it needs people to be able to deliver those goods and services, right? Yeah. And so how far do you push the people that are helping you get those goods and services out, right? If you tell me your Prime membership is going to get you packages in 1 day instead of 2, okay, who's pushing the packages? Who's loading the trucks? And what did that do for them? So, man, everything that moves in business is being moved by people in that organization. So at some level, they're always impacted by decisions. If we're going to try to double our revenues this year, who's doing it? The people at the worker level. They're the ones doubling the revenue. The organization made the decision, but the workers have to drive it. So there's the human cost is always there, man.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a beautiful example, and Jeff sent something here too. So thank you, Jeff.
Hey man, my fiance, I hadn't been to her place today. I bet she got a package from Jeff. She gets stuff from Jeff every day, man.
We out here. Martha got a package from Jeff. So, one thing that you and I share in common is this love of compassion, right? Especially in business. And I talk about specifically in a lot of the leadership work that I do as a fellow leadership nerd, I talk about authentic leadership, the role that authenticity, vulnerability play in leadership. Right. And I had a situation that I want to tell you about. I'm curious to hear how you would have answered it. Okay. So I was speaking at a small private school up in Massachusetts, a university. And so I give my whole talk about authenticity and vulnerability and basically how we need to have better conversations, and relatability is super powerful in leadership and supervision and the way that we talk to each other, because when you see yourselves in somebody else, we automatically believe a little bit more that we can. And so there's a lot of power in relatability, and we can't get to relatability if we don't have vulnerability, yada, yada, yada. See, the dance they all play together. And so I give this whole speech about authentic leadership. And this gentleman comes up to me, 6'3", golf shirt on, and just a great hair, looks great, right? Like, and could have been pulled from the could have been pulled from like the Kennedys, and had the accent to boot. And so very nice man, but the whole presentation, he didn't laugh at one of my jokes. And I don't know if you noticed, I have my moments. I'm pretty funny. But still, like, he wasn't giving me anything. I was like, I'm gonna get this guy at some point in time. Didn't get him the whole time. That's fine. You win, sir. But he comes up to me afterwards and which is always surprising. Usually the most angry people in the room are the quickest to leave. But the fact that he came up to me afterwards, I also appreciated, because that means he was actually paying attention, right? He was thinking about the message. He was absorbing it for him. And so I was like, oh, shoot, maybe you're not a douchebag. Great. Let's have a conversation. And so he said, and so he says to me, he's like, James, I like your speech. I like your speech, James. He said, but I don't think it applies to me because I'm going into business. And business, you kind of have all these ways that things are supposed to be done because they've been done the same way for so long, and the way that people carry each other. We're not going to all of a sudden be authentic and be touchy-feely and be like, oh, let me tell you about this, that, and the other thing that's going on in my life. He's like, I'll get crushed if I do that in the corporate world. He's like, so I appreciate your speech, but I just don't think it could be helpful to me. What are your thoughts about that, James?
Wow. Yeah.
So what do you think about that, man?
If I would have heard that, I would have thought to myself, like, man, poor guy, because he must have been in some really tough competitive environments. If you're working in a space where you feel as if there's no room for that, just think about what it would feel like to work in that particular setting. But look, I've been in some really, really tough work environments, man. Being a Black engineer, working in IT, working in military and defense.
Sure.
It can get tense, man. But I always kept it the same. I'm very level-headed. I'm kind of cool, calm, collective, really chill guy. But I'm also, compassionate and show concern. And even in spaces where I'm not met with that, I still lead with that. And what ends up happening is you end up breaking through, because it's such a stark contrast with what everything else is in that environment, if that makes sense. I've had some people that were nasty to me in my career. I've also had people that were really good to me. And the people that were very nasty, I kept it the same. I was still very, thank you, man. I really appreciate the fact that you're talking shit right now and you think I suck, but man, I wouldn't have made it here without you. Matter of fact, I'm gonna send you a thank you card. God bless you. I'm not gonna waver in those settings. And I think that you have to really double down when you are in environments like that. And it's not because you're trying to change the space. It's just that everywhere you occupy space, it's your right to be able to lead with how you are. You shouldn't have to check that at the door. So, that's what I would have said to him. I don't know if it would have worked, but it's what I would have said.
No, I like that, man. I like that for sure. And I agree. It spoke volumes to me that this gentleman was already ready to dive into a corporate culture that he was like, and this is kind of what I talked to him about. I was like, do you think what I talked about today was important?
Yeah.
And he said, yes. He's like, I do. He's like, it sounds nice. He's like, I'm just going to get eaten alive if I try it. And I said, so you are just going to go in and be complicit with the system that you've been handed? And I was, and that's kind of what we talked about from that. Like, it's how we had the conversation.
That's actually a good point. Yeah.
Right? And so you got to pick your battles, right? You can't go, especially as a young buck. You can't be in there. I mean, I made that mistake for sure. I made a few too suggestions in my first job out of grad school. Asked a few too many pointed questions. And so so anyway, I blackmailed myself with that one. So still, I mean, you got to play the game for sure. And that's an interesting thing. I guess last week and I talked about this. Is it better to be in the system than trying to change it, or is it better to try to change the system from outside? And so there's some things that I talked to him about, and I think it's such an interesting idea. There's a book by a guy named, I'm going to mess up his name. It's either Dershowitz or Dereshowitz. I'll come back to it. But the book's title is Excellent Sheep. And it's an interesting book. And he wrote it about Ivy League schools and how Ivy League schools are not asking their students to think. They're only teaching their students how to be excellent sheep, how to succeed in this current world, and not challenge it, not anything, just like, no, you come through this system, you get your grades, you do what you got to do, and then we put you out into the world and you just kind of keep the cycle going. Fascinating concept to me, for sure.
That's happening. It's happening a lot. I think that's where business schools are being challenged, especially on this ethics piece, because people are going back to how these folks are being trained and saying, look, you've got to do things very different. I do think that there is something to be said about being in the system and not really being able to change it versus, not being in the system. I do think it is a choice. You always have a choice of whether you want to be in a system or not. But when you're in a system, sometimes you don't have any power to do anything different. So the only thing that you can do is bring yourself to the table and lead with that. It may or may not always be accepted, because I can't say I was always fully accepted everywhere that I went. But I like to tell my students that, hey, you do have a choice in places that you go and spend your time. If these places don't work for you, that's fine. And yes, you may miss out on certain opportunities, but there are other places that you can go that may work for you too. And so that's something I think a lot of young people don't realize, is that there's power in choice and power in using your voice.
Yeah. Isaac, I completely agree, brother. I like the way you think. I knew that already, though. It has been so special getting to hang out with you. Thanks for giving us a little bit of a key to your brain, and just letting us in, man, to some of your philosophies. And also, I appreciate you telling us more about educating me. I know definitely about tribes in Ghana and in Africa, for that matter. And I mean, the whole way this conversation has been super cool, man. I really appreciate you a lot.
Hey, man, this has been fun. I've enjoyed it. An hour has gone by and I'm like, oh, wow, it's been an hour. It felt like 20 minutes. It felt like we're old buddies, man. So look, when the world opens up, we got to commit to getting together at a diner somewhere between
I need these wings you were talking
Minneapolis and Nashville.
Yeah, I'm coming to Nashville and getting these wings.
Hey, dude. Some good wings, man. I'm telling you, it's some good wings down here. Yeah, for sure. And maybe I need to make my way up there, because Target's is one of my guilty pleasures too. I hang out there when I'm looking for some stuff to do. And the headquarters is right where you are.
It is, yeah. We have a stupid amount of Targets here.
I can imagine.
I went to the original Target, and apparently it was the original Target. I didn't know that. And the only thing that it's just like any other Target, they just have a plaque in the front. So that's about it. I was hoping it would look kind of different or something like that. Like, they bring back the vintage look, but no. Like
I talk a lot about them in all of my classes, man, because they just have a great business model. I mean, they got a good thing going.
Yeah, for sure. And the way they cultivate young leaders too, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. That's true.
I recommend a lot of students that are looking to get into business from the jump. It's just like Target's a good place to start, because they're doing the right thing with their training.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah. So, well, listen, Isaac, I appreciate it, man. Would you be willing to hang out for a little bit of a Q&A here?
Yeah, of course. All day.
Awesome. We're going to do that in just a second. My friends who are listening on the podcast, it's been so special getting to hang out with y'all. Thanks for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, give us some stars on that iTunes review system they got over there. And make sure that you check out Isaac. All the information about him will be in the show notes. Thank you for listening, y'all. Have a dope day. All right, Isaac, let's talk here, man. So first off, if anybody listening has some questions for him, throw them in the chat, and let's talk about it. I think some funny things happened up here. First off, Dr. Keisha Simmons. I think do you know her?
That's my lady. You know what? The whole time I'm thinking nobody's commenting on this thing, but I'm in private chat. I didn't have comments.
There you go.
There's a whole bunch of stuff going on over here. This is cool. All right.
So your fiance did indeed. She didn't appreciate getting called out. She did indeed get a package today.
Jeff blessed her. Hey, Jeff is the man.
Much respect. I love that. This was interesting. Martha also put this up here. Children tend to also speak to parents' languages native first. Deaf parents' first language would be to sign.
Wow.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, there's a cool point. And then Martha asked a cool question down here that I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on. How would you compare tribes in Ghana, Africa in general, to a student, for a student to be able to understand it?
Yeah, sure. I basically say, think about the different cliques in your high school. If you were in high school and you had different cliques, like you had the gamers, you had, the jocks, you had the prep folks or whatever, those essentially would be tribes. And by tribe, meaning they all had their own unique way of communicating. They had this unique connectivity amongst them. They were still a person, but the way in which that they relate to each other is very different from how you might relate to them, and how you see them is different from how they see you. That's probably the best way to explain the whole tribal concept to a young person. That's
super clean.
I just made that up, man.
That was great. You nailed it. I assume you nailed it. But no, that was awesome, man. That helped me connect some dots too. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. And then Martha asked another question. Will your PhD in business allow you to just teach business, or do you also want to teach engineering? Do you think engineering is a part of your world moving forward? Would you want to?
You know what? With just a master's in engineering, you can actually teach in engineering school. Okay. So I could teach engineering courses with just a master's, but if I wanted to be on a tenure track, get a tenure track professor position, you need the terminal degree. So I do see myself at some point teaching engineering management. That's something that I've always wanted to do. I've always felt like engineering students should have courses in business. I just don't know why it's not a part of the curriculum. And I'll tell you why really quick.
Project management, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure. But here's the thing. When you are an engineer, you're working on technical problems, but those problems at some level impact the larger business. If I fail in a design effort and we have to go and redo something, that affects the bottom line. People in engineering have really no concept of that because they're not taught it. I would teach engineering students some basic business principles so they could go off and be better engineers for the organizations that they work for. So that's something I'd love to do at some point.
Yeah.
But it's awesome. It's not in my current role. The current scope of my role is to teach courses in business.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a number of friends that are engineers, and they always talk about, obviously they're working with different clients and whatnot, and they just the negotiation and then billable hours and stuff like that. And there is so much business in engineering. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, for sure. I got expanded in that world when I worked at Booz Allen Hamilton, and I was on some of the business development efforts going after proposals. And I started to understand how we had to communicate our technical expertise to business people so that they'd give us the contract to go do this technical work. That's when things really shifted for me. Yeah.
That's also what made you good at explaining complex issues in really simple terms. Right?
Gotta dumb this down real quick.
Hang on. What'd you say you do? All right. Hang on. It's so funny. There was this, that reminds me, there was this in England. I forget what university is in England, but in order to get your PhD in biology, one of the last tests that they make you do is that you have to go and explain what you are doing to fifth graders and why it matters.
Wow.
And you need to be able to explain to these fifth graders why it matters, because that's in general, or it's like fifth or seventh graders, because in general, that's mostly of who you're going to be talking to, right? People, you need to be able to explain it to individuals at that kind of learning level, right? So that they just get it. And I thought that was a really cool challenge for those students to have to dive into.
I could imagine defending my dissertation in a group of fifth graders. My son's a fourth grader. Keisha has a fifth grader. We have a first, fourth, and fifth grader. But man, kids are tough. It would be a hard sell on why this work matters. I'd probably walk out of there like, why did I just spend a decade on this? These kids think this is pointless. They don't get it.
I noticed that your partner has a doctorate as well. What's her area of expertise?
Her area is business information systems.
Okay, y'all about to run the world out here.
Business background. You know what, man? Our dream life is to be on somebody's beach somewhere.
Let's get it.
That's the goal, and then maybe doing this kind of stuff online, connecting with folks, and doing things in the community from the beach, though.
Of course, we have standards, Isaac.
Right.
I love that. Well, Isaac, I can't thank you enough for coming through, brother. I really appreciate it. It's been so dope getting to hang out with you, and I appreciate you gracing the diner, my man.
Hey, man. thanks to you, James. And also we got to give a shout out to our buddy Sam who got us connected up, man. Thanks a lot, Sam.
Shout out
Keep
to Sam,
paying it
baby.
forward.
That's it.
We
Just
both
like
deserve some batch boxes after this, right? I know he's probably listening. That's why I said that. Maybe he'll send me one.
It's a deal. Yeah, right, for sure. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's the least he could do, really. I don't really need any more packages from Jeff. I need something Sam Davidson. So
you know what? Sam should try to become the new Jeff just through batch.
There you go.
Yeah, he could do it.
He'll work it out. He's on his way, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Certainly got the brain for it. Respect the hell out of that man.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Hey, this was great, man. You got a good thing going here. Can't wait to tune in to future Diner Talks. I love the concept. Funny guy. We got to figure out how to collaborate on some of this leadership stuff, man.
Let's do it. Let's do it, Isaac. I appreciate you for coming through, man.
For sure.
All right. You be well today.
All right. Take care.
All right. My friends, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Diner Talks. That was my boy, Isaac Addae, soon to be Dr. Isaac Addae to you. But I hope that you all enjoyed this episode. If you did, please make sure that you subscribe to this YouTube channel that you're watching this on. And I would love to hear what you thought about it. Throw some notes in the comments. But until then, my friends, remember that the difference between small talk and meaningful conversation is a good question. Y'all take care and be well.